Correspondent Simon Marks in Washington. Let's pick up some of those points with Sahar Aziz, the distinguished professor of law at Rutgers University, where she also serves as director of the Center for Security, Race and Rights. Professor, welcome. I just want to begin, if I might, with that point that our correspondent was making, the White House claiming the protester shot dead by ICE was a threat. The analysis of the witness videos obviously cast doubt on that version of events claimed by US authorities. What does all of this do to trust in public institutions when truth becomes political?
Yeah. Well, I think what we're seeing is the attempt to hide the unlawful use of lethal force by ICE in at least two occasions for which the entire country and the world has witnessed this violation. The general rule is that law enforcement cannot use lethal force unless they reasonably believe that there is imminent risk of lethal force going to be used against them by the civilian. And so in the case of Renee, she was using her car to leave the scene. And in the case of Alex Pretti, his gun was holstered. And according to news reports, the ICE agents had already removed the gun from the holster while they were wrestling him down to the ground and then shot him while he was literally unarmed at the time and in the back. So on their face, these facts, unless there's something else we don't know, this does not justify the use of lethal force by ICE. And the Trump administration and the DHS secretary and her lawyers know that. So instead of pointing or relying on the law, they're relying on propaganda and using the bully pulpit through their political influence to essentially rewrite the facts, to claim that these people are domestic terrorists, to claim that they were threatening ICE. But the problem is that now that we have these smartphones and now that we can witness the violence firsthand, it demonstrates that what they're doing is not only unlawful, but it is also un-American.
Let me ask you about the legal training and what this incident and others reveals about the training and the experience of ICE agents when they're deployed.
Well, anyone who is a law enforcement officer that has the legal authority to use a gun must be trained appropriately, especially within the U.S., because the vast majority of people they are interacting with are civilians, and many of them are unarmed, especially in the case of these protests against ICE. And so they're supposed to receive training to ensure that they don't violate the laws that restrain them from using excessive force. What we've seen is with the $45 billion plus that Congress authorized to ICE, much of which is going, or to DHS, much of which is going to ICE, is that they're hiring hand over fist anyone and everyone, many of whom are white. And I think race matters a lot here because the targets of the immigration enforcement are primarily Latinos, Somalis, Haitians, Middle Easterners. And if you look at the identity of the ICE agents, many of them are white. And they're oftentimes right-wing white nationalists who now have guns, no training, and are going around shooting people, including now shooting white people. So this is going to create an intra-white conflict or racial strife, and this is why you're seeing tens of thousands of people come out onto the streets, because once the victims are no longer just racial minorities who have always experienced racial violence by the state, now they are white communities. And at that point, you start to get the majority of white Americans, especially the liberal ones, realizing, wait a minute, this is a violation of our social norms, it's a violation of our laws, it's democratic backsliding, and these are the practices that authoritarian regimes are often engaged in. And we believe that we should be living in a democracy, and this is not welcome here. So in sum is, they are not trained. And so we should expect more and more unlawful use of violence against civilians
Aziz,
who do not pose a threat to law enforcement.
Professor Aziz, we have to leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.